Hello,
Hi, Blaine.
we're ready to go. And hello, everyone. We wanted to welcome you to our very first panel of the day, titled Interviewing for Success. To introduce myself, my name is Blaine Valencia, and I'm a 2L at Berkeley Law. I'll be moderating this with Katrina. Katrina, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Katrina Senchin, and I'm a 2L at the UC Davis School of Law.
And our panel today features four really wonderfully accomplished, well-established Filipino attorneys in Northern California who have really each had a hand in leadership and hiring in their respective sectors. We're really excited to be joined by Vanessa, Aimee, Richard, and Suzette. And before we delve into our questions for today, we would like to begin just by having each of the panelists introduce yourself, share more about your profession, and a little bit more about your experience in the hiring capacity. We can start with Vanessa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Vanessa Candelaria. I have a family law and estate planning practice in the East Bay, specifically in the Contra Costa, Alameda County areas. I have a team of about 11 and we're growing. And I'm looking forward to sharing some nuggets with everyone.
You can go ahead, Aimee.
Thanks, Blaine. Good morning. My name is Aimee Hamoy. I'm a litigation partner at Burnham Brown in Oakland. I've been a partner there for now 6 years, and a big part of my practice is general liability premises work on the insurance defense side or the premises owner defense side. And some of the other work I do is for cities and counties and law enforcement, again, relating to defense on civil rights cases or excessive force cases. I'm so impressed with everybody else on this panel and the students who've put it together. I think that hopefully for everybody who's listening today, you'll walk away with at least one or two really practical things to use in the future.
Love that. If we can pass it on to Suzette.
Thanks, Blaine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Suzette Torres. I currently serve as Associate General Counsel for Opendoor Technologies. They're actually located here in the Bay Area. I also am the interim head of legal for one of their subsidiaries, OSN National, which is actually headquartered in Georgia. For me, it's like we are in a hiring spree. Hint, hint. So it's and I do real estate litigation, anything title and escrow. That's my jam.
And last but not least, Richard.
Thank you, Blaine. Good morning, Richard Pio Roda. I'm a partner at the law firm Meyers Nave in Oakland. I am a general counsel, contract general counsel, and I serve as a city attorney for the city of San Leandro. And I'm also general counsel for several other special districts and nonprofit organizations throughout California.
All right, and with that, we're going to dig right into the questions. Let's go to Katrina.
Thank you so much for that, everyone. We're so excited to have this opportunity to learn from you all today. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the questions that we prepared for today. The first one being, when interviewing a candidate, what are the top 3 things that you pay particular attention to? Can you rank them, and can you explain the importance of each in your evaluation of their candidacy?
I can kick this one off first. So this was a really good question. I actually came up with 10 things. So if I made 3, it's 1, your elevator pitch, can I trust you, and would I like working with you? They all go in, depending on who the candidate is, it goes in different orders. So let me kind of explain real quick. Usually your elevator pitch, for me, there's a book out there called 60 Seconds and You're Hired. So I feel that you should be able to tell me who you are, why should I hire you within 60 seconds? Because you should, if anyone you could talk about, you should be able to talk about yourself the best. The second thing is also, would I like working with you? If you think about it with, whether you're in litigation or you're doing corporate stuff, the people at work, you are spending a significant amount of time with them. So I want to make sure that whoever I hire, that I'm going to like working with them. And most importantly, can I trust them? Things that go on, whether it's, in deep litigation or in corporate matters, like there's a lot of confidential, private stuff that goes on. So I need to know that I can trust you. I can trust you to do the work. I can trust you to define like what's private, what's confidential, and to really, kind of take the ball and run with it.
And we can go
I'm
ahead and
gonna
pass
jump
it.
in.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to jump in there on Suzette's last comment about trust, because I think for me, that's probably in my top 3 items as well. And I think that's really in relation to, if you come to a law firm and maybe you don't have a lot of prior experience, maybe you've had a couple of internships, or you've been polishing your resume and trying to find sort of what's the right fit, what area of law do I think is interesting. A place like a civil litigation firm in my office, where we have several different practice groups and several partners who kind of transition between those, trust is probably one of the most important things. So, and that's not just about confidential information, but that when you agree to take on a project, or agree that a deadline is appropriate and you'll have the memo done by Friday, that's something that the person who's giving you the assignment is really going to count on. And so that type of trust, I think, is really important. And then probably another important characteristic is to, if you can, express for the interviewer why it is you want to work there. You know, what is it about this company or this firm that made you make the effort in the first place to put your resume in, to set the time aside and get to know who these people might be that may work with you, or at least consider hiring you, if not for the exact position you want, maybe something close to it.
I think I can jump onto all of those perfect examples, but also saying that we want to see that you're prepared. Preparation is key. And so to jump on what Aimee just said, you want to express that your interest for the position, but your interest in the position should also match what you put in your resume, because we don't know you, but we see your resume, and your resume got you into the door for us. Whether it's your high grades or your particular experience, it's going to match what we're looking for, because the position will be one that is looking for a type of attorney in most cases. So you want to match your resume to the position itself, and then your examples, your interview, the way you talk about yourself needs to match up with your resume. And all of that comes back to preparation. So we're always looking at preparation. We're going to ask questions that will test your ability to think on the fly, to answer a difficult question about a difficult situation and how you handled it. So be prepared for those kinds of questions. And finally, we, like Aimee said, we want to know that you have a particular interest in our law firm, or whatever agency that you're going to be interviewing for. So do your research on that law firm, and do your research on the person or persons who are going to be interviewing you, if they tell you in advance, of course. And they usually will. We'll tell you, at our firm, we'll tell you who you're going to be interviewing with, so you can figure out who we are, look at our resumes, look at our bios on our websites. And preparation, I think for us, is key, and then matching your interest with what we're looking for.
I guess for me, I have a smaller outfit than Rich, Suzette, and Aimee. So it's incredibly important to me who's on the team, not saying that it's not incredibly important to them as well. We're just a smaller outfit, like I said. And like Rich said, know why you're there. Don't interview just because it's a job. For me, I don't find too many people who go to law school because they want to be a family law attorney. It's pretty rare. And it's usually a life experience that leads them to this path and this career path. So I want to see that you've got fire in the belly for practicing family law. It is a very emotionally draining area of practice. And a lot of people get burnt out. I want to see that enthusiasm. I want to see that you've kind of catered your law school career even to work in this particular field. And like I think Suzette said earlier, you would be spending a lot of time. I spend more time here in the office. I'm in the office right now than I do with my own family. So for me, it's also a measure of, do I like you? Can I work with you day in and day out? And if so, then maybe let's continue this conversation. But for me specifically, I'm looking for obviously a good fit, but someone who genuinely likes the practice area and wants to excel at it.
Great. So for the next question, in this time, suffice it to say, the interview process looks very different. Things are virtual. We communicate over Zoom as a norm, and the interview setting itself is virtual as well. We have to care about backgrounds, professionalism, conveying yourself to the camera instead of a human. The question that I have for the panelists is, what are the big differences that you've noted between virtual interviews and in-person interviews? And what advice would you share from the hiring side for navigating those differences?
Well, I'll start by saying having the preparation again is key, and being in a place that is obviously have a stable internet, but also is quiet and provides a place for you to focus on us and allows us who are on the other end of the call or the video conference to focus on you. So that means distractions and things behind you, noises. I know it can be tough if you're in a situation where that's not possible, but if at all possible, you have to find a way to make it as focused as possible, because it is distracting to have a lot of things going on. And we understand, trust me, we as hiring folks, people who are interviewing, we understand the situation, but if you're doing the best you can, that would be great. And obviously professional appearance as much as possible is important. And all that comes back to being prepared and preparation. And we know it's hard. I think we'll cut some slack in that respect, but it makes what comes out of your mouth, the words that you say, so much more important, because we'll eventually meet each other in person one day, and you'll be able to express yourself to us in person. But when we're asking the questions, getting to the call of the question, being prepared as far as, again, the position and what we're looking for, and like Vanessa said, expressing that passion for that area of law or the type of practice or the firm that we are is going to be even more so. And you have to just do it with your words. It's hard to describe other than, I think most lawyers are perfectionists. And this particular situation, this is your show. You got to be perfect at this particular moment in time to get us to really understand you and think that we can trust you and hire you.
I just want to add on to that, because I think that is all true. I definitely echo what Rick is saying. But I think also during this time, especially during the pandemic, there is an amount of forgiveness. So I think the last time when we all talked, I was telling them about a situation. I think I was on a call with the C-suite, and then someone made a comment, "Is someone's dog drinking water?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's my dog. How do I turn off the mute?" So, in some ways it's funny, but I think as much as you can, you want to try to put your best foot forward. But, again, I want to do stress. I think in this time, a lot of employers, there's a certain amount of forgiveness. Like, we understand that this is remote. A lot of people who I hire, it's like they're not all in the Bay Area. We hire from Oregon, from Texas, from Georgia. So, there's time differences, and kids are coming home. So I always want to give that, amount of understanding when I do these type of interviews as well.
I haven't had the opportunity to interview someone on Zoom, but what I have done a lot of are court appearances. And so I have seen kind of what to-dos and what not to-dos. But at the end of the day, I think if you're interviewing, we're both judging each other, and you need to convince the employer that you're worth hiring, or you're worth that extra interview to see if it'll be a good match. And so I would just caution folks about exactly where are you? Do you have good internet connection? And, Rich and Suzette might be forgiving about certain things, but some employers might not be. So I would say just be very strategic about where you are when you're interviewing, and what is in the background, and who is there, and what possible noises can go off. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I think we're
And then
all...
make sure your cat filter is not on either, too.
I think we're all on the same page there, and hopefully folks who would sign up for a seminar like this would take this kind of thing very seriously, would be the type of individuals who would make the effort to, you know, find a place to get half an hour of quiet to give all of their attention to the interview. I, like Vanessa, have not been interviewing any new hires during the last 18 months or so, but I did do 2 remote interviews of folks in Southern California, even before the pandemic started, for other positions in the firm. And I did see a variety of approaches to it. And I interviewed 3 people, and 2 of them used their cell phone. And one candidate used the video conference function from his car. And I was a little bit startled to see that he was interviewing with me, you know, literally in his car. I could see his headrest, you know, everything behind him. And I wasn't distracted by it probably for the first minute or so. But then, I think, you know, we both focused on the conversation, right? And his resume and whether or not that was a good fit for us and what he was looking for. But out of the 3 interviews I did, the one person who seemed to take it the most seriously was somebody who had set up their laptop camera in like a corner of their house, you know, and so there was sort of just like white walls behind the candidate, and they dressed for the interview, right? They had on a suit and they were very focused for the 20 minutes of time really that we needed to have our conversation. So it wouldn't surprise me if now hopefully more people have taken on that approach. I think it's a good way to go. And in the end, what'll help you, I think, to interview well in that remote setting is to really put your game face on, right? Get dressed. I have on perfume today, even though we are remote, right? Because that's part of my making it out the door and no longer being in my home mode, right? Or in my less than being a lawyer mode. So maybe that's something that you need to do. I mean, granted, I'm also wearing slippers and it's Saturday. So that's like my, you know, my concession for today, but something to think about as you prepare yourself for interviews in this unusual setting.
That is also helpful for us as we navigate these remote interviews that I know so many of us are going through right now. Thank you for that. So for our next question, we're going to speak to our Filipinx identity, which we would be remiss if we did not mention during today's Komunidad. And our next question is, as students of color, many of us have suffered from imposter syndrome and felt the need to code switch to get jobs at predominantly white firms. As Filipinx identifying partners in positions of hiring, what is your advice to applicants on how to present themselves genuinely while also maintaining professionalism?
This is a great question and a tough one. As someone who has done a lot of interviews for hiring, including for some Filipinx candidates, I'm always excited, of course, to see that there's a Filipinx candidate. And if I'm reviewing resumes for positions, especially for my practice group, I'm looking for them. So you already have a leg up if I'm already going to be one of the people that's going to be there. And that's, again, who you're going to be interviewing with is always going to be important. And that's part of the preparation. And that's part of the professionalism of it all. And I'm going to keep hammering this theme of preparation, because it's the only thing that you can control. It really is. And if you are the most prepared you feel you can be, you won't regret however the interview turns out, whether you get the position or not, because you know you gave it everything you had. And part of giving everything you had is, of course, being authentic to yourself. And I do believe that one, above all, is to maintain professionalism at all times. Maintain your belief in professionalism and your expression of professionalism, which comes back to your preparation, how you are appearing, especially in the video we just talked about, but also in the way that you're expressing your interest and your passion for the area of law. In part of that preparation, know in advance what questions, if you can, anticipate what questions they're going to ask, just like any good lawyer would do. That's how we always prepare. So you, as an interviewee, should prepare if they're not going to give you questions in advance, and some do. I know that some organizations do give questions in advance, or you go and research on websites and figure out what have questions been in the past that they've asked candidates. definitely do all of that research and preparation. And then finally, when you are going to know, when you know who you're going to be interviewing with, or you step in the room you didn't know, and they're all majority folks, you just know that you have to be that much more prepared and stronger in your responses. And that's just the nature of it. I think of it more as a challenge than any other way to think about it, because they're going to get the best me no matter what it is they're looking for. Finally, I do understand that there is this feeling of the imposter syndrome, but it all can be mitigated with, I think, again, understanding who you're going to be interviewing with, doing your research in advance, going to the websites. And I think, as we've talked before, understanding if there's something specific on the bio that that person did, pointing that out that you thought was really interesting, or they were mentioned in an article recently, pointing that out to show that, hey, I recognize you, so you can recognize me. And you're going to recognize me because you know that I prepared for this and I was paying attention and I want this job, or I want to work for you.
I'll tell you that this is this question in particular really gave me a gut check. I actually had to go look up code switching to make sure that I understood the definition correctly. So as in my research, I was looking at what the one most item where it talks about code switching. It's this sense of identity. And I think that's really hits home for every one of us here. The best way for me to kind of reason through it or explain it is through a movie. So one of my favorite movies out there is Crazy Rich Asians. And it is the pivotal moment when Eleanor is talking to Rachel, right? And because Rachel is dating her, beloved son, and she doesn't like it. And Eleanor turns around and tells Rachel, "You will never be enough." And even from that phrase, that hit me in so many directions. I always thought, am I American enough? Because I don't look American, whoever defines what American is supposed to look like. Am I Filipino enough? Because I don't speak the language. Am I a good enough attorney? Or am I just being an imposter, kind of fake it till you make it type of attitude? And I'm here to tell you today, it's kind of like you are enough. And it's a struggle that I still struggle with some of these identity issues today. But I'll tell you that whenever I go into an interview, I know I'm putting my best foot forward, and I am making sure that I let that interviewer know that I am enough. You need a job that needs to get done. I can do it based on my experience, my references, and so forth. I did not travel this far to get where I am to fall flat on my face. I am enough to do each task that you give me the ball and let me run with it.
Thank you, Suzette, for doing that research. I actually had to look it up too after our test run earlier this week. And what I will say is if anyone has looked at my website, you will see that I do hire Filipinos. I feel that as a Filipina myself, I can empower other aspiring Filipino attorneys by working side by side with them. And so it gives me great pleasure and honor to have such a team. And I think half of us, if not a little less than half of us, are Filipino. With respect to the interview, you have to be unapologetic you, because if you are not authentic, people such as Suzette, Rich, and Aimee, and myself, we have the smell test. We're going to know we are real. And so we can tell if you're faking it or not. So, be unapologetic you, have confidence in yourself. There's a reason you're at the table sitting in front of us, interviewing with us. We see something in your resume that we think is really, really special, that we're considering having you join the team. For me, I really want to get to know you as a person. I see what you've done on paper. Tell me what you like to do in your spare time. Again, we will be spending a lot of time together. So I'm also looking for do you like family law? Is it a good fit? Can I mentor you? Are you competent? I mean, there's so many little checks that you have to cross off during this interview process. And then also, you know, I'm kind of an energy reader too. Like I really go off of folks' vibes. And so it's intuitive for me. It's an energy thing, like I mentioned, but I really am aware of that. And so, you know, come to the interview with good vibes.
I would anticipate that a number of interviews will involve you talking to more than one person, right? In your role as the potential candidate. And you may need to speak to 2, 3, or 4 leaders in a firm or a business. And it may not happen in one setting, right? It might be a result of 1 or 2 different meetings to determine whether or not you would be offered a position at a company. So I think it's important to have a consistency about who you are, because those folks are going to talk about it. You know, I saw Ms. Candelaria on Monday. This is what I thought. And somebody says, oh, I saw her on Thursday and she acted like this other way, or she talked about this other issue. If you're consistent sort of in your message and your feeling about why you want to be somewhere, that's something that can help those leaders who are looking at hiring to agree on the type of candidate that you are and what you've presented. I think imposter syndrome is a really interesting phenomenon that we're finally naming, that a lot of folks have in different aspects of their lives, not just in their career. There's plenty of working moms out there, I'm sure, who are feeling like they can't wear all the hats, no matter how many hats they keep putting on. Same with parents, everything, right? So I think it's important to cut yourself some slack. Those of you who are on here who are 2Ls and in this time where everything is so unusual and sometimes really scary, you're not the only ones feeling those emotions. So don't let yourself necessarily believe that you're an imposter or anything, right? We're all living through it, working through it. And if you focus on some of your strengths, hopefully that means that you're not going to focus so much on the things you think you don't have. Don't worry about that stuff. Some things only come with time and experience. You can't learn it from a book. You're not going to get that information, memorized and make it a part of your being getting ready 3 days before an interview. But if you focus on your strengths and the things that your friends and your colleagues or your professors have worked with you on, those are the things that'll help you, I think, overcome those feelings of not being good enough or thinking you don't have this. Because the career that you take on, if you do become a practicing attorney, it's a long career. And for me, this is probably my little emotional part here because Suzette got me thinking about it, but for me, it's a craft, like an art in a lot of ways. And what we do for our clients, what we do for our community to give them pathways to resolving problems, to conflict resolution with one another. Those are some of the most important things we do as lawyers. As much as we love, a good movie where you've got people pounding the table and judges yelling at people, at the heart of what we do when we finally practice is that helping people resolve their problems. So if you can show those types of traits in your interviews, that's something I think that your hiring committees will really be able to pick up on.
Great. Thank you all so much for answering that question with so much warmth and care. I think it's extraordinary and meaningful that it's coming from you all. To our next question, as Richard raised, preparation is super important. And part of that practice is verbalizing and articulating the interview answers themselves, doing mock interviews, receiving feedback. And with that, the question for the panel is, what are your recommendations on how to frame your experiences to achieve the most impact? Do you have any examples of really effective responses that gave you a strong reaction, especially good ones in the interview setting?
Do you want to go? Oh, okay, I'll jump in here. I just, as soon as you brought that up, I remember that we had a candidate who was very honest about why she had to take the bar more than once. And that she had something going on personally And that's why she just wasn't successful. And, you know, it took her more than I think 2 tries to pass the bar. And she was very forthright about that it just took her some time, that she had some family issues. I believe someone had passed away in her family. And that led her to, while she took the exam, just wasn't a successful exam. And then I remember after she left, I thought, okay, you know, I think she can do the work. She seemed really nervous during the interview. And my managing partner said, I respect that she didn't give up and that she kept going. And to him, that was more valuable, right, than somebody who necessarily had the highest grades, right, or passed the first time around. So I think that there's something about that, a resilience that she gave in her answer and a willingness to be honest. So for what that's worth, maybe that's something for folks to consider.
I like to listen to people's stories, and everyone has a story, and it's very important how you convey it in an interview process while still being professional. That gives me kind of an insight into who you are and why you are who you are, and why you're in front of me here today. So I like it when it's very impactful to me when someone shares their story. And I usually in turn share my story too. When Blaine, I think you asked the question, the first thing I thought of was like, what you don't do at an interview, because it's also memorable, right? So there's positives and negatives. I was on an FBank mock interview panel many years ago. And I remember we were doing a mock interview with someone, and she started crying. I made sure she's not here today. Just kidding. And she was very genuine about her answer, but she started crying. And afterwards, the panelists, I guess we talked about it because we wanted to give her constructive feedback. And it was really interesting because there were 4 of us. 2 of us would have given her an extra interview, and the other 2 felt that her crying wouldn't give her a second chance. You just don't cry at interviews. So that was something I remember that I'm just sharing with everyone. I think we're all emotional people. We're probably really nervous. And sometimes, especially when it's your dream job, do not cry if you can't help it.
I think there's a really great point. Don't cry in an interview. That's a really important one I think for a lot of people, but emotion's okay. Showing emotion at the right time, of course, during an interview is okay. But I'll be a little bit even more sort of fine-grained about it, because the type of law that we do, we're a full service law firm, and the type of law that I do as a general counsel is as a generalist. So you're going to be touching a lot of different issues, and you're going to be looking at a lot of different things. So I'm looking necessarily for someone to express their ability to think thoughtfully, but also be resourceful. You can't spend 10 hours researching a project, going down a rabbit hole without thinking, I need to talk to whoever assigned me this project. I need to know that you're going to be able to pick out and have the right judgment. So judgment is such a big part of it. And how do you express that? Well, everything sort of, again, has to match what you're saying with what you provided us on paper. If you say that you're a detail-oriented person, and this is a perfect example, your resume better be perfectly detailed. And when I say detailed, I mean grammatically correct. I mean, periods were in the right place, no misspellings. Because if you say you're detail-oriented, and I'm gonna look at your resume, well, you misspelled something right here. That's not detail-oriented. And so much about what a transactional attorney does, what a general advice and counsel person does, like myself, is all about the details, but also getting to the core of the question in a way that's efficient to, as Aimee said very, very perfectly, to help answer the questions and solve problems for clients. And they have a limited budget. And so you can't spend X amount of hours just thinking about something and ruminating on it, philosophizing and doing the research. We got to get to an answer right away. And so as a generalist, as a general counsel type, I'm looking for you to express that And it's hard to do. I understand that. But so much about it is, again, researching the area of law that we do, that we're interested in you. Even though you may not have, and I think this gets to a later question, even though you may not have any relevant experience, you may be able to pull from experience you do have to express those deeper underlying things we're looking for, because we're going to tease those out of the interview from you as to, in my case, are you detail oriented? Are you resourceful? Are you efficient? Are you thoughtful? And do you have good judgment? We're going to be able to tell just by the way you answer questions and how you express yourself in your written product, because we're going to see, you're going to be submitting writing samples. A lot of times for a lot of employers, including for us, especially if you're a 0 to 3 year, we're going to want to see a writing sample, because so much of what we do is providing written advice. That's I think exactly the point for preparation, but also everything has to match perfectly, and all that comes with practice. And you have mock interviews, etc. You have to practice and know yourself and know your experience backwards and forwards. And trust me, it's going to come through. It's going to come through in the interview when you're prepared and you know exactly yourself back and forth. We're going to notice it. We're going to be impressed.
So as you all have touched on earlier, it's so important to do your research and prepare before an interview. And our next question speaks to that. Our next question is, based on the information that you have about your interviewers and the organization, what is the most meaningful way to convey your interest and show that you've done that research?
I like that question a lot, because I think we all talked about this when we first met up. Because as much as research that you do, I think, I would look at everything. I'm looking at LinkedIn, I'm looking at Facebook, I'm looking at Snapchat, I'm looking at Instagram, checking out your Twitter feed if I can, any of those other, social media, which is scary because there's so much out there on social media. So as much as I know you're probably researching like me and my background or my company's background, you should also know we're doing the same thing with you too. So what I'm always impressed is like when the interview comes in, I can tell when they've done their research, when they can speak more about why they make a great fit for a company. Like they could talk about it's very rare that I'll get someone like, I love title and escrow. This is my jam. That never comes across. But I always get someone who's like, I've read your mission statement about Opendoor, giving everyone to empower everyone with the freedom to move. And that really speaks to me, and this is why. Now that's someone who I know took the time to read, up about the company and see how that company also reflects their own passion. And when you can do the research and kind of like reflect the passion that you have, like from day to day to like whether it's a firm or a company, that speaks volumes to me. And I know that, hey, this is someone who I really want to get to know better. So that's, I highly recommend you do that type of research.
I think I mentioned it before, again, doing research also on recent articles that a person who you may be interviewing with was quoted in or actually wrote, or a case that they were published. They're going to be very proud of those things. And to actually read them and understand them, because of course it connects to the type of practice they have that you are interested in joining, is going to speak volumes for, and it might even take an interview into a place where it becomes more of a conversation. Because again, remember, an interview is a two-way street. An interview, you're not just being interviewed, you're also interviewing them as well. So not only are you expressing your interest, they want to know that you're interested in them and their firm. And so that kind of research will just show itself. It's going to be obvious that you're interested in them just as much as they're interested in you.
So I work with a bunch of folks who can really stalk folks on the internet. And so I got to hand it to my team. If I want to know about somebody, I get details I don't want to know about. But to echo what Suzette and Rich said, just know we are looking for you. And there's been 1 or 2 times where someone's profile on a social media site caused me to cancel the interview. So just know that's really important what you put out there on the internet. Let me just add something to take it a step further, because this legal community in the Bay Area, it may seem large, but it's really small. And everyone tends to know someone who knows someone who knows someone who used to work with Suzette, or who went to law school with Rich, or who, had Aimee as opposing counsel. So if you are interviewing, try to find a connection to the person or the firm that you're interviewing at, because you will get a lot of feedback. And I get asked that all the time, have you ever worked with so-and-so, or aren't you really good friends with Suzette? What was her experience like at that real estate firm? So in terms of preparation, like Rich said, I would encourage you all to take that step as well, to find out, what is it like to work with this person? What is it like to work for this company or firm?
You may not have a lot of time during the interview to ask, questions of the interviewers, but as Rich was saying, it is a two-way street. So that is probably one of your best moments, right? To convey your interest in XYZ firm or XYZ company, framing your question in a way that demonstrates that research that you did, but also that you really care about the answer, right? So hopefully it's not just a question that you ask and don't really care what the firm or the company has to say, right? I mean, if this is a place you actually want to get a job offer from, then make use of that 3 or 4 minutes at the end of your interview time to ask a question that demonstrates your preparation and your research that everyone here has talked about. But then also maybe you can find a way to ask a question that also conveys why you want to be there, right? So maybe it's about a particular practice group that might not even be in the room with you at that moment, but you're hoping that that is a practice group that you can eventually work with. So for instance, you might say, hi, I know that you guys have 4 different practice areas that are in a growth mode right now. What about this practice area? If I was able to work here, is that a group that maybe in the future, if it were in a growth mode, would I be able to get projects from a partner in that group? That question is a little deeper, right? And it may not come naturally to you to ask it if you're just coming out of law school, but if you have worked a little bit, had some other work experience, it may feel more genuine to ask that, because larger firms like Rich and mine, associates are very important to our practice. But I might be in a place where, you know what, I've settled 10 cases and I don't have anything on my calendar for 6 weeks. But you don't want to sit there with no work if you're an associate for me. So if you can demonstrate that you're interested in other areas of law, then maybe there's another partner who can keep you busy until the time comes back around again that I've got projects for you. So that would be my comment about how to demonstrate some organizational interest.
Great. So for our next portion, we're just going to ask a handful of specific questions for some of the panelists to the extent that we have time, and then we'll move into the Q&A. First off, we've got one for Suzette. For an in-house role, are there traits that are considered more valuable than would be seen in another sector? Maybe something like business acumen or things like that. And if a candidate is looking to transition to an in-house role and does not have prior private sector experience, what should they highlight, or what should they obtain to make themselves more marketable?
Okay. So let me answer that first question. For in-house counsel, I will tell you it could be almost anything that they're looking for. What I've realized is when I went in-house, is that a lot of times where I felt like, okay, it's the imposter syndrome. Do I really, like, for example, do I really know how to do underwriting? No, but I'm sure I could figure it out. And it's all about being able to play your strengths into fitting those roles. So some things like for in-house counsel, what they do look for, they want to look for candidates who are able to float from one area to another. Do I handle employment law? No, but I know who to ask. I know the questions to ask, and I know how to get results. It's like things like with litigation, like I love litigation. So it's like, I know how to float in and out of litigation, whether it's a complaint directly to the company, or maybe it's an internal complaint, within the company. Those are things where you should be able to get enough skills to be able to, let me see, what was the cliche? To know enough to be dangerous, right? So I think for those law students, right, now is such a great opportunity to explore and try everything. Look into sports and law, look into IP, look into employment, look into bankruptcy. If you have the opportunity to grab that knowledge, even just like a very basic knowledge, you're going to learn, you'll learn those expertise when you're actually practicing. I promise you that. Because there's something to be said. That's why it's called the practice of law, right? We're practicing every day. Every day I'm learning something new about the company. I think business acumen is really good. I probably cannot read a spreadsheet to save my life, but that's why we hire like great accountants. Like there's a team for that, right? And so those are the things where, you should never be afraid of things you don't have. Make sure that you have a foundation where you can rest, like, I know what I do have. I know my skill set. I know where to get answers. And that's going to carry you a long way. With regards to the second question, what was it again? It was like the path to go in-house. Was that the other question? So I'll say there's two ways to look at it. So for me, I took the long route where I was in private practice for 10 years, did the whole partnership thing, and it was great. And then I had the opportunity to go in-house, which I would kind of start down the totem pole again. It's kind of like, well, do I want to take that risk? I'm like, no billable hours? Sure, I'll take that risk. And so, but it's kind of different ways to go into it. You could take the long route, which is what I did. You gain the experience, background experience, litigation, real estate, so forth, that fit that certain company and go into it. But I will tell you that I know a significant amount of other in-house counsel who went straight from law school. And something to echo what Ted said earlier this morning, it's most jobs are found through word of mouth. So right now is the time to network. Whenever you can, like meet someone new. I used to tell my mentees, like, okay, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is that you need to go out there and find 5 new people who you've never met before, get their business cards. You need to go connect with them on LinkedIn, and Godspeed, go off and do amazing things. That's a great way for you to practice, meeting people and then finding people who, who mesh with you, who maybe are doing things that you want to do someday. And I think that's a great starting point for anyone, whether it's in law or business or so forth. I think that's a great way to start off, is network with people.
So unfortunately, we are running a little short on time for our panelist specific questions. So we'll ask one more panelist specific question to Aimee. And our question for you is, with your experience as a deputy district attorney, as well as your extensive experience in litigation, what differences have you noticed in the hiring practices between the different fields?
Oh, it's kind of a big question, but I think that Vanessa's comments from earlier this morning kind of helped me put that in context. So in the criminal law field, there are a lot of people who go to law school and that's something they're very interested in doing, right? They have some interest in either maybe the public defender's office or the prosecutor's office, either way. Or maybe they know somebody who does private work in the criminal defense setting. So that particular area does, I think, lend itself to more successful candidates if you sincerely want to do that work. I don't recommend that people who are afraid of standing up on their feet and having to answer questions from people who don't like you to interview for those types of jobs, right? It's a lot of standing on your feet. It's a lot and thinking very quickly. It does, I think, require some passion about the criminal justice system, right? And your feelings about that system are very likely to evolve over time, depending upon what side you're on and depending upon the kind of work and cases you get. There's plenty of folks I've known over the years who left the prosecution side to do other types of work, moved to different counties. It's a little bit political of a position, depending on where you are in the state. So I think that is a significant difference than being in a more generalist setting like a civil litigation firm. Most of the time when I interviewed in the settings relating to criminal law, I was interviewed by a panel, anywhere from 4 to one time I interviewed with 10 attorneys at once. That 10 attorney interview, I will share with you all, was a long time ago in the city of Philadelphia. So they have very strong feelings about the criminal justice system in Philadelphia. And that included a lot of hypotheticals and definitely some pressure to know code sections and certain trial skills. So if you are looking into those areas of criminal law, that's something that you want to be prepared for if that's going to be an area you interview in. Whereas if you're interviewing, again, more for a law firm setting or a company setting, I think a lot of the tips you've heard today from the panelists will get you very far.
All right, thank you. It looks like now is the time to kick off our Q&A. We've got a decent number of questions already in our queue, and we'll start off with those, but we encourage any of the attendees to ask any questions, and we'll try our best to get to them. So the first one that we've got here, it's speaking more so to the kind of elevator pitch style question, but tell me about yourself. The attendee asks, can you suggest a template answer when the interviewer asks you to tell me about yourself? And how did you find the right balance of saying enough and saying too much? Any of the panelists?
Okay, because I'll kick this one off. So sometimes like I try to find examples that really kind of stick with me. So my favorite example, like whenever, and I'm trying to just be flippant about this too, is like, you know, when someone asks me, oh, tell me about yourself, I'll quote Hamilton. I go, well, I'm young, scrappy, and hungry. What else do you want to know, right? And usually, but it's kind of like that kind of humor that kind of helps spark up a bigger conversation. No, really, tell me, what do you do? And then I could tell them, like, I'm a real estate litigator at heart. I've been doing this X amount of years, yada, yada, yada. I think for that question, it's going, whether if it's a template to give, that's a really hard thing, because I think it's personal, right? It's personal to each person. And what you have to kind of figure out is that you've got to be able to speak your truth, right? That if you know that you could get your dream job in 60 seconds or less, and all you had to do was to tell them something about yourself, what would you want that person to know in 60 seconds? I think a lot when you talk about your passion, things that mean something to you, things you've been doing, or a lot of times it's kind of, I think it was what Vanessa and Aimee were telling about a story. We all love a good story. Sometimes that really speaks volumes to people. And it's what I would recommend is practice on your friends, practice on your family, practice in front of a mirror, and I would time yourself. I will tell you that these are things that I would do when I was trying to, whether it's like getting ready for trial or even interviewing. My husband is probably sick of me doing this, asking him, hey, can I try something on you? He's like, no. So, you know, I think the more you practice, the more comfortable you feel about yourself, and you'll be able to find your template of how you could speak your truth.
I couldn't agree more. I want to amplify the answer by also expressing your values and how those values fit with the organization that you're going to be interviewing with. And whatever those values are, be true to them, they should be authentic to you. So if you value that you're a hard worker, you value wisdom, you value justice, say those things and do it in 60 seconds. 60 seconds is the number. 30 to 60. It's longer than you think, actually. It really is longer than you think. And that gets the interview started really well if you have a practiced, well thought out, that expresses your values and who you are as a person, what you value as a person, and how that connects with the organization and what you're going to do as their employee.
I agree with that on it being 30 to 60 seconds is actually longer than you think. I would say that I struggled with this when I was a newer lawyer, you know, how to make this type of a pitch. And I probably tried a lot of different versions of it, in part because at least I think culturally, and certainly in my own family, the idea of touting your achievements, right, is bragging, and it's looked as a poor trait, right? It's not encouraged. I certainly can hear my grandmother's voice saying, do something, but don't tell anyone, right? Let them see your success, but don't talk about it, right? These ideas of not being mayabang, right? Keep that aside. This is the opposite of that, right? Because people already know you're accomplished enough that you're almost through law school. They know that you are a person who had to work hard to get there somehow because they were there, right? It took a lot of time and effort to get this far. So here it is, like put any feelings you have, I would suggest about thinking you're talking too much about yourself or that you're highlighting yourself too much, probably aren't true. And go ahead and put that spotlight on those 3 or 4 big characteristics that you think make you a great employee, a great friend, a good lawyer, a good law student, a good thinker. If you kind of focus maybe on those themes and then maybe weave in some of your values, I think you probably a long way to getting to that perfect, 30, 60-second description of yourself.
Do we have time for another question? I want to be mindful of the time. Or do we have time for me to speak? I can't echo enough what everyone else has said here. In terms of a template, make sure that the values you convey are similar to the company's values, right? For example, integrity is always big. It's number 1 for me. Suzette or someone mentioned earlier, can I trust that you're going to get me this on time when you say you're going to get that to me? Be able to convey your values in that 30 to 60 seconds. Again, while being humble, while being unapologetic, you've got to showcase, this is your opportunity to kind of sell yourself to an employer and show why you are, and for me, it would be an investment because I'm also a business owner. Are you going to be able to bill and meet your hours? Are you going to do it competently and effectively? Because no one ever budgets for a family law attorney. So we've got to add value to our clients here. Are you going to come to me when you hit a wall and not be afraid to ask me questions that you consider dumb? Those are all great things that you've got to somehow convey in 60 seconds or less. But just keep in mind that, in the interview process, there's, you sell yourself, but you also want to make sure that you show the employer why you would be a great investment.
That was really insightful. Thank you, everyone. Our next question is for Rich and Aimee. So in marketing ourselves to firms that have multiple practices, how do we show that we have a niche or specialty in a particular area of law, while also demonstrating that we are interested and well adept in other law practices?
I for one, that's a great question. I definitely want to hear it. Don't be afraid to state it, and just come out and say it. Be honest. It also shows your preparation, and it also shows that you've thought. You're thinking about us in a way that, like Vanessa said, is profitable, because we're in this for profit. Even though we may represent nonprofit clients, at least in my firm, and we represent government, we also represent a lot of companies. We are a for-profit business. So already thinking about the business development, which you're going to hear a lot of, being a business developer, which is very important for any firm, is paramount to what we do, especially at the partner level. So to show that you have thought about that is impressive enough already. And to ask about it is all you have to do. As far as I'm concerned, it's going to express to me that, I might even ask a follow-up question as to, what do you think about that? Do you have this particular experience or contacts? Because that's already adding value to the firm from a business standpoint that I'm always thinking about.
I would agree with Rich that, coming out and saying that you're interested in a particular area is important and can help guide the interview. If for some reason it doesn't come up or it doesn't get discussed, maybe there's something on your resume that would allow you to weave it into the conversation. Maybe you belong to a particular journal, maybe you've written an article, maybe you've clerked for a judge, or you did research for a professor on a topic that is related to something that the firm does, but isn't right on point for, say, the position that they're specifically hiring for. Weave it in somehow that way. It'll sound natural. Don't feel like you're, pushing the conversation beyond what's supposed to be done. I think anytime it's something that's on the resume that everybody's looking at, it's a great way to open that door to discuss something a little different than what's already been discussed.
Let me just add one more thing. It actually is a great way to keep in touch, actually, because even when you interview, let's say you have a good interview, but we don't choose you, you're always going to be, we're going to both agree. You might have been a fine thing. It might have been you just have not enough experience, or maybe you have too much experience, which is harder. Just keep in touch, and being able to keep in touch and keep that conversation going is going to play out really well in the future, because you never know when we're going to be hiring again, and we're going to remember you and say, I'm going to bring that person back, because we don't just get all the rest. We keep resumes on file of people. We have notes of people we liked that do come around and do get a job right back with us again in the future, because maybe the fit just didn't fit on that particular time, but it allows you to come back, send your thank you email, send your thank you note, and it allows us to remember you and keep in touch. That's a great way from the interview to carry forward in the relationship. Like Vanessa said, we're a small community. We're going to remember who we interview with, and they'll come back around and we'll think about them on the next position.
Rich, can I ask you a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
I just want to know, so for the ones that you don't pick, do you encourage them to kind of call you back and ask the question, can you tell me why I didn't get the position? Or I don't know, have candidates done that? Like reach
Yes,
back?
they did. They definitely have. And we have actually hired those who have kept in touch. It's a true story. Absolutely. Or the other success story is I thought about them and knew a friend who was looking for somebody probably similar, and I referred them to them, and they got hired there. So now I've got another person in my network who I won't say owes me a favor, but I really think that they think of me as connecting them with somebody that eventually hired them and changed their lives. And I'm always happy to do that. And here's the little secret, here's the dirty FBank secret. We'll always do it first for anybody in FBank. For all the law students, you will always be first in our minds, no matter what, because you're FBank. That's just how it is.
So it looks like we're all out of time, sadly, but again, we want to thank Vanessa, Richard, Suzette, and Aimee for joining us today and imparting so much wisdom on us. I feel like I learned so much in this past hour. So thank you again, and I think we are going into lunch next.
Sounds good. Can I just jump in here, Katrina, and let people know who have attended today? If you have any questions or other things that come to mind, you have our contact information. I'm just going to volunteer it now. Send an email. It's fine. Don't think you're bothering us. We'll get to you when we get to you. Not going to lie, but we will respond. It just might not be the same day, but we will get back to you. So please don't hesitate.
I echo that. Absolutely.
Agreed. Yes.
Please do that.
Okay, and it looks like, yes, okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everyone. So good to see you all.